All right, Cindy, sounds like we've got the recording going.
That's correct.
All right, so welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the June 16, 2023 Board for Indigent Defense Services here in Nevada. And so, Cindy, I'll call this to order. Or will you conduct a roll call, please?
I certainly will. Good morning, everybody. Dave Mendiola,
Present.
Laura Fitzsimmons,
Present.
Joni Easley,
Yep.
Chris June Kiliani,
Good morning.
Jeff Wells, Drew Christensen, Kate Thomas,
I'm here. No, it's just to say. You can do it.
Lorena Dellinger, Commissioner Hall,
Present.
Allison Jaffe,
Present.
Harriet Cummings,
Here.
Jared Hickman, and Justice William Maupin. We have 8 total.
We're good to go then. Thank you very much, Cynthia. Appreciate it.
You're
All right, so we'll move on here. Public comment is the first item. And is there any public comment? First of all, Cindy, did we get anything online?
No, I've been checking all morning.
Okay, thank you. Any public comment? We don't have anybody in the audience here, so out there online virtually, any public comment? Okay, we'll move on. Item 3, approval of the minutes. We've got 2 sets. First one is for February 2 of 2023 and June 7, 2023. Are there any, if everybody's had an opportunity to review those, are there any changes, edits to February 2, 2023?
Mr. Chair, it's Joni in Tonopah. I was present at the last meeting and I was listed as being absent, but I've already talked to Cynthia about that, so I'm assuming that got fixed.
Okay,
It'll be fixed on the final minutes.
Okay, great. I'll make a motion to approve both sets, Mr. Chair.
thank you. First, get a second. Chris, is that you, a second?
Yes.
Thank you very much. We got a first and a second. So just need a motion for February 2, 2023 and June 7, 2023. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And of course, that's pending those changes for the finals that she brought up. So, all right, those
Chair,
are
if I might
passed.
interrupt briefly, you do have to ask for any opposition.
I'm sorry, say it
You
again.
do need to ask if there's any opposition.
Oh, is there any anybody opposed to that motion? Hearing none, motion passes. We'll move to number 4, legislative update. And so we've got item A is discuss the legislative session, including Senate Bill 39, Senate Bill 479, Assembly Bill 454, and Assembly Bill 518. And I'll turn this over to Marcy.
Thank you, Chair. Marcy Reba for the record. Just filling everyone in on our legislative session. I think the department had a very successful legislative session, and we have had 4 bills regarding the department that we'd like to talk about today. Beginning, if you look in your notebooks, it's section 3, if you have a physical notebook, and we've separated them all for you. So to start, Senate Bill 39, if we all recall that we were talking about the concerns with confidentiality, that attorneys are providing requests for expenses for experts or investigators to our department. And it was very important for our department to ensure that those matters remained confidential and protected by the attorney-client privilege. So with Senate Bill 39, that's now effective and signed into law, is that anything that's received by the department would be protected under the attorney-client privilege, and it's not subject to a public records request. So we will be working with our designees to make sure that they are aware that if they get requests for funding, that individuals cannot request that. And we are working with them to try and have them redact any sort of billing that they provide to the county for payment so that we can ensure that it is protected.
And
So-
when does this become effective?
It's effective immediately. It's effective as of signature. So that was the two changes that were created by Senate Bill 39. Moving on to Assembly Bill 454. This one is very important too, because what it did is it clarified that any expenses that are over and above the maximum contribution fall as a state expense. So for our rural counties that are building their budgets, or actually all counties that are building their budgets, they can know that if they're requesting reimbursement pursuant to the maximum contribution program, once they hit that maximum, that the department will be reimbursing them from allocated or appropriated funds. And if there's insufficient funding to be able to appropriate these rural counties, the department is able to go to the statutory contingency account to request additional funds. Another big factor that was created by Assembly Bill 454 is the fact that the department is able to establish hourly rates by regulation in counties whose population is less than 100,000 for those indigent defense services cases, and also in all counties for the post-conviction cases, which are considered a charge against the state. As we all know, the statutory rate is currently $100. It hasn't been increased since 2003, and counties are acting independently on their own to increase that rate, and we'd like to help them out with that. So those positive changes have been made by Assembly Bill 454.
Is that going to be on our next, a topic for our next meeting?
Yes.
To raise the rates?
We will be requesting to set a workshop in the next meeting, for the next meeting, so that we can start talking about the hourly rates. There's also going to be some cleanup, because as I go into Assembly Bill 518, you'll see that the maximum contribution formula is set to become part of statute. So just going back to Assembly Bill 454, that is effective at this point in time. It was effective immediately upon passage and approval. Assembly Bill 518 sets forward the maximum contribution formula into a statute. And what it sets forward is it's basically what the maximum contribution formula was for this year for each county. And specifically, there's two formulas, one for the urban of Washoe and Clark, and one for the rural counties. In the rural counties, it's set as their last year's or current fiscal year's maximum contribution plus 5% or inflation, the lesser of. So what we're going to be going into today is setting the maximum contribution for each of our rural counties using this formula. For our urban counties, we did work with our urban counties to create a formula and an opt-in that they were happy with. The legislature was concerned if Clark County opted in midway in the biennium and if the department didn't have sufficient funding. So what we've set forward is the urban counties can request reimbursement pursuant to the maximum contribution formula. They are required to give notice by March 1st of I believe it's an odd numbered year, so that the department can build this into our budget for the next biennium. And we would present that request for the urban counties to the legislature for an appropriation from them. But we will continue to build in what's requested for all the rural counties. They do not have that specific requirement. Another request that was added by this bill, and we are still waiting for the governor's signature on SB 518, is many of our forms are required to be signed by the Board of County Commissioners. And it was the request of an individual to add language or its designee. We're working with designees of the Board of County Commissioners. So this kind of opens it up so we don't have to have a full board motion for these forms that are required to be submitted. It can be provided by that designee. This will also talk about when the reports are done on a quarterly basis if they're requesting reimbursement, or it could be on a basis as, you know, as we get going and working with these counties, what works best for them, we could modify our reporting use. The last part, there's two parts that I'd like to focus on. If you go to section 7.3 of the bill, actually, let's start with section 7. It's on page 10. There will be an appropriation to the interim finance committee to set aside statutory contingency accounts if this is signed by the governor of approximately 6.3 million in the first year of the biennium and 6.6 million in the second year of the biennium. And the purpose of this is to reimburse counties if there was insufficient funding in the maximum contribution formula. Peter's going to get into our budget when we move next, and he'll be telling you that we did receive an appropriation of $3.5 million in each year of the biennium, so a total of $7 million. And if that falls insufficient, we do have funds that are set aside to go and request that additional reimbursement. This will also be used to bring the department into compliance with the Davis stipulated consent judgment. As Tom will be getting into later, there are some concerns that the monitor has stated in her 8th monitor report. One being that our training budget is not the same as what the prosecutors are receiving. And then also the oversight department, that the department lacks sufficient staff to be able to do that. So we will have these funds set aside where we can create a work program to improve our oversight by possibly adding more staff or whatever is approved by the legislature. And then also by getting additional training costs so that we could provide those same services that are being provided to the prosecutor. We also, as Peter will tell you, in the public defender's budget, they did set aside $100,000 for a complex litigation unit. And what the thinking behind this is, if there is a death penalty case or a very complex case in the rural counties that the local attorney just doesn't have the ability to be able to handle, that they can call in the public defender and the public defender can come and help. The public defender has $100,000 in their budget to be able to contract with attorneys to come in and sit first or second chair with that local attorney. And these funds that are set aside allow us to ask for additional funds if there is a large case and if the $100,000 is just insufficient. And I've already covered that it is set to pay for the training and pay parity for attorneys. So as we talk about the hourly rate at the next workshop or the next meeting, you know, these were things that we could explore as to whether we need to go and request funding from that appropriation. In section 7.3, another exciting thing that's being provided as part of this bill is the Department of Indigent Defense Services is being appropriated approximately $1.4 million in each year of the biennium. The purpose of this is to allow for a stipend for the district attorney and the judge. We will be making these payments directly to the county by August 1st. And the purpose is, with the creation of these weekend bail hearings, the rural counties have expressed that there's substantial hardship to have the judges showing up every day without any sort of relief. This will provide a stipend of $450 for each day on the weekend of those bail hearings, so that the judge or the DA can be paid $450, and alternate coverage can be looked for by the county so that the judge can be provided relief. The public defender's office will also receive an appropriation that can be used for public defenders. And we are going to be recommending that those counties that have a public defender's office, that at the time that we make the appropriation for the judges and the DAs, that we also make that appropriation for the public defenders, because the public defenders will also be entitled to receive a $450 stipend for each weekend bail hearing. So it can be dealt with at the county level as to who receives that stipend, but it is to encourage relief for our public defenders, because generally they're working 5 days a week plus that weekend bail hearing. And they can choose if they'd like to have that $450 stipend and work the weekend, or if they'd like to have alternate counsel. So we can work with the counties in finding individuals to cover that. The smaller counties that don't have a public defender's office or rely on contract, we want to be reaching out to them to see if they'd like to have that funding up front, or if they'd just like to ask for reimbursement on a quarterly basis. So we'll be talking to each of the counties to see how they would like to receive that appropriation. So that we're waiting on the governor to sign this AB 518. But once they do, it's going to make some very, very exciting changes on many levels. And then finally, Senate Bill 479 makes an appropriation to the department for this fiscal year of approximately $2.5 million. We all know that there's $1.2 million that's set aside in the statutory contingency account for those Davis counties. But the purpose of this $2.5 million is for all counties. And we reach this amount by looking at what counties have budgeted. We've subtracted their maximum contribution and we made this request. So when you add that with the 1.2, we believe that there'll be sufficient funding to reimburse our rural counties fully for the maximum contribution formula. And that is effective upon passage and approval. So I don't know if there's any questions on any of these legislative bills.
No questions, Mr. Chair, but just one comment about Marcy's terrific work this session. I really appreciate her.
Thank you, Joni.
Yeah, thanks, Jody. Any other comments?
Just me, Mr. Chair, Laura Fitzsimmons, being in Carson City and watching not just Marcy, but all of her staff show up on weekends. There were lobbyists who would text me and say, we can't believe it. There are people, which is, our staff there on weekends when none of the paid lobbyists are. They did an incredible job. And obviously we need to thank the members of the legislature who really, stood up for our mission and supported the DID staff. And thank you very much.
Jeff Wells is also online here. Thank you for joining, Jeff. Anybody else? Any comments?
This is Chris. I just want to echo that. I know that Marcy, we had a few tense moments when we weren't sure where a few bills were going to be. But I think through your staff's persistence and the passion of this board, I have to say the board members weighed in and talked to individual legislators to make sure that the financing went through. So I think everybody should be thanked for their due diligence, and it worked out.
And Chris, I'm glad you said that, because that's one thing that I liked about how Marcy and her staff approached some of these challenges. They kept us all involved in the process and invited us to support them. And I'm sure many of us took an opportunity to do that.
Thanks, Joni. Good observation.
Yeah, thanks, Joni. Any other comments before I get my opportunity here? Yeah, I just want to say thank you as well. I know that there was some pretty intense moments over the last 3 weeks. Many calls with Marcy and the team trying to figure out how do we approach this and how do we balance that issue between the governor's office, finance office, and the legislature. And again, Marcy and team just did an amazing job of working through it. And I think probably more important than anything long-term, developed a relationship with the legislature and legislators about what they're all about and what we do. And thank you for that. Appreciate it. Okay. One thing, Marcy, here, I do know that if we look at item 5B, we are going to need a motion to approve the information that you just discussed on AB 518. Do we want to get a motion now and do that, or just wait till we get to that place?
Well, and Dave, if you want to look at what we're referring to, if you look at section 4 of your notebook, and for those that are looking at their documents online, it's in the annual reports by county. And the very first page is showing what the maximum contribution formula would be using what's set forth in Assembly Bill 518. So what you can see in this table is we took everyone's maximum contribution from fiscal year 23. We've added 5% because that was the lower of inflation and 5%. And what you see in that column that says maximum contribution fiscal year 24 is what we're asking for approval from this board. It's what we use to using Assembly Bill 518. And as you can see, Clark and Washoe are not requesting a maximum contribution for this next biennium. So that's why it says non-applicable.
So, so if everybody understands that, so the bottom line is we just need to adopt this maximum contribution formula based on the 5% in 518. So
I'd move to approve.
we have a motion to approve. Got a second?
Second,
We have a second. You can take it from Chris, or we also had others there, but so we'll take that. We've got a motion, a second. Everybody understand the motion? Looks like it. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes. Very good. Thank you for legislative update. So next I'm going to turn it over to Peter for discussing the department budget.
Sure, and I'll give a brief update. So for the fiscal year 24, we appropriated $4.7 million approximately. About 3.5 million of that is that for that maximum contribution reimbursement amount. So that money is now in a DIDS account for fiscal year 24 and 25. The remainder is for personnel services, operating, training, travel, those sorts of things. Additionally, if 518 is signed by the governor, that would add another 12 million that's available to the department upon request from ISC. We're also, as you heard earlier, receiving about $2 million for fiscal year 23 to pay any overages from the 1.2 million in section 80 to reimburse the counties over their maximum contribution. The public defender's office has a budget of approximately $2 million. About 400,000 of that has been allocated for developing the White Pine County office, which includes 2 attorneys, staff, and facilities, operating expenses, computers, those sorts of things for that office. Most of that budget is a little misleading because a lot of that budget's actually set aside for repaying post-conviction attorneys for their services to the state. Yeah, I think that's really the gist of it. If you want to see further indications of the amounts that counties have paid so far, you can take a look at the counties requesting reimbursement for fiscal year 23 indigent defense. And that will show each county's breakdown as to how much they've expended so far through the 3rd quarter, the current maximum contribution amount, and the average expenses by the counties. Again, we utilize this form to determine how much and when counties are being reimbursed. And we expect that we'll be able to use this in this quarter and the upcoming quarter to get the rest of the counties reimbursed as appropriate.
Thank you, Peter. Any questions on that?
This is Chris. I just wanted to say, you know, in the annual report, I think I love the title Deep Roots because I think it shows what our commitment is as a new department. But making sure that the rurals are protected and held harmless has been a huge thing because I think it sets, well, promises kept, I think says it all. And luckily the legislature came up with enough funding for us to be able to keep those promises.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Thanks for that comment, Chris. Any other comments? If not, I assume we need a motion to approve the department budget.
Chris, so
I'll
moved.
make that motion. Thank you.
Was that?
Take Chris's, I'll second that.
I'm not sure who that was, so
Joni.
that was
It was
Joni.
Joni.
Thank you, Joni. So I do have a motion and a second here on approving the budget, department budget. Everybody understand the motion? All those in favor, signal by aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Very good. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Next, we're going to move on to item 5, which is the overall budget. Item A is the fiscal year 23 quarter 3 county indigent defense expense reporting. And so do you want to handle that, Marcy?
Yes, thank you, Dave. So this morning we passed out a form to those individuals that are in person, and Cindy emailed it to all the board members. So if you check your email, you should have our most updated reimbursement amounts. This past Wednesday, we went to interim finance, and once the legislature closed, we were able to request reimbursement for these rural counties pursuant to that $1.2 million that was set aside. So if you look at how much has been spent, you see that Churchill, Douglas, Lyon, and White Pine had provided proof that they had met their maximum contribution in time for us to file our work program. And Churchill will be reimbursed 148,670. Douglas will be reimbursed 214,928. Lyon County will be reimbursed 230,849, and White Pine will be reimbursed 75,793. So at this point in time, we have received that approval to reimburse them. And as soon as the funding is in our account, the funds will be sent to them. You can see that there are 2 other counties that did make their maximum, Mineral, but we didn't have it in time when we submitted our work program, and also Story County, but we're missing additional supporting documentation. So we have not been able to reimburse them yet.
Okay. Thank you. Do we need anything on that?
No.
No, I think it's okay. So review maximum contribution. We went through that. We talked about that early. We've got we passed that motion. And so we'll move to 5C, which is review and approve county annual plans and budgets. And I think we go to tab 4 and 5 for that.
That is correct. So if you see tab 4 and 5, you'll see the budgets in tab 4 for each of the counties, and then also any sort of updated plans in section 5. The ones that we would like to highlight are Carson City. As we recall at our last meeting, we did approve a corrective action plan where Carson City will be creating their own public defender's office. If you look to their proposed budget and their annual financial status report, they have stated that they will be paying the public defender's office $0 for the next biennium. That has been approved by the governor's finance office. So moving forward, the state public defender will not receive any additional funding from Carson City. My understanding is they also hired their public defender yesterday. So we're hoping that there will be a swift transition so that they can start taking the work and covering it as need be.
You mean Carson City?
Carson City.
You mentioned
yes.
Elko, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Carson City. Moving on, Churchill County did update their plan. We will be receiving a new update because they need to add the municipalities into it. We've been working with each of the counties to build the municipal courts into their plans because the statute does say that the selection of council needs to be done as set forth in the county's plan for indigent defense services. So they will be giving us an updated plan. Elko County has provided us an updated plan. They've involved their municipal courts. So has Lyon County. They've started to involve their municipal courts. And then finally, Lander County, we found that they were not reporting their juvenile expenses. There was a misunderstanding on that. So they've clarified in their report that their appointed council administrator will review the billing for juvenile cases because we want to make sure that our rural counties are getting reimbursed and made whole for every expense that they can include at that reporting. And those are the budgets that we'd like to highlight. And we just ask that you approve these budgets.
Very good. Thank you, Marcy. Any questions about the budgets themselves or any changes to those budgets? Very good. Can I get a motion to approve the county annual plans and budgets? We have a motion
A second.
and a second. Everybody understand the motion? I got Allison coming back in. I'm going to give her just a second. So Allison, on the floor, we have a motion to approve the county annual plans and budgets.
I'm familiar with that information.
Very good. Thank you very much. So we have a first and a second. All those in favor, signal by aye.
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 Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, Marcy. Great report. We're going to move on item 6, the Davis update. And Tom, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Tom Qualls for the record. I have a few things to cover here, so I'm going to go pretty quickly. As I think everyone knows, we've contracted with Dr. Mitch Harrion over the last 2 years to do a number of studies for us and recommendations in order to help us achieve some of our mandates, including parity. So he's done over the last 2 years, and you see the summary of the studies and the reports and recommendations here, but they all mostly have to do with either parity or dealing with the scarcity of indigent defense attorneys in Nevada and how we can counter that. So he's done overhead studies. He's done studies regarding the hourly rate and the increase that would fit with cost of living and inflation. He's done compensation studies for prosecutors and also given us recommendations for, as I said, to deal with the scarcity, including pipeline recommendations and possible reciprocity with other states. So you can read that or his other reports in more depth. Also, we have been contracted with the National Center for State Courts for the last 2 years in order to do a caseload study. Again, as I think we've reported in the past, we've been waiting for about a year on a national study by the RAND Corporation, which was apparently finished last May, but it's been in peer review since then. We have made a decision to move forward without the RAND study because we just don't know when it's going to come out, and we keep getting reports, and our oversight shows that there's a real need right now to increase the number of attorneys in several of the rural counties, including Churchill, Elko, and Nye, just to name a few. So in the interest of providing relief to all of those counties, we would like to move forward. We touch base with Suzanne, with NCSC a couple of times lately, and provided her with updated reporting through Legal Server. And we're going to run new numbers and then have recommendations for this board, at least by our August meeting. If we decide that we need to call a special meeting, we might do that as well. But we would like to move forward with that and then move forward with putting it in the regulations as required so that we can start that mandate for the counties. As soon as we have numbers, we'll also start working with the counties as a preemptive thing to say, this is what we think the board's going to approve. Let's start moving forward there. So that's kind of exciting news. A very, very brief review of the monitor's 8th report. Marcy made reference to this earlier, but I just wanted to touch on page 5 on the summary of recommendations, which list out some of our concerns. And I want to do that only because our success in the legislature has addressed and or fixed most, or at least made progress on most of these things. As Marcy indicated, adequate resources for oversight was a concern and has been a concern with the monitor. And if 518 or when 518 gets signed by the governor, there will be money in the contingency account for us to address that, possibly get some people in the field and some other resources to more adequately oversee courtrooms and the like. Adequate budget for training. Again, that money would be in the contingency account under 518. Adequate staffing for the state public defender. That's an issue that's ongoing, especially with the changes in Carson City right now, but the raises and potentially the changes to PERS can help us address that. Reimbursement for county expenses. Again, Marcy went over in some detail how we're addressing that both in this fiscal year and in the following biennium. So that's a success as well. The exemption to Executive Order 2023-03, and that has to do with regulations and whether we're able to make new regulations as required, specifically with regards to the caseload and the new hourly rates. And we just heard from the governor's office that that moratorium, if you will be going away. So that is another thing that we'll be able to move forward on. And then improve timekeeping. And Marcy can correct me on this. I don't know. Does 518 potentially provide for any incentives for record keeping? Did we put that in there?
It specifically sets aside funding for us to comply with Davis. So our department has thrown around the idea, and we received this from one of our appointed counsel, that if attorneys take a certain number of appointed cases as an incentive for them to keep time, that we provide Westlaw or Lexis free of charge to them. So that's something that we could try and build into our request. But it wasn't specifically set aside like the others are.
So I think that's really, the bottom line is really great. Our work, certainly the board's work and all of our legislative support made it possible to successfully address most of the concerns that are in the monitor's report. Professor Hanan cannot be with us today. She is out of the country. So she won't be able to address any questions to that, but I can answer any questions to those 3 items if anyone has any.
Great. Thank you, Tom. Are there any questions on any one of the items that Tom covered there?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
it's Joni in Tonopah. I don't have any questions about any of those 3 items, but I would like to question Tom and Marcy. I read the monitor's report and I was concerned about a number of deficiencies that were identified in Nye County, and specifically the underreporting by the contract attorneys. Is there any way that we can tie the requirements of Davis to contract renewals, that would certainly be a component in contract renewals?
Certainly. We're working with Nye County pretty closely and have been for a while. It's another one of those catch-22s that's a little bit exacerbated by the scarcity of available indigent defense lawyers. We've successfully and with Lorena's help successfully added one contract to their public defender contract plan, and also gotten a $25,000 raise for each of the contracts. We're still working with Lorena to increase the number of contracts. The reporting issue is where the catch-22 comes in, because ostensibly they were given a raise in order to help them with reporting. The problem is that my oversight shows that they're each carrying between 350 and 400 cases.
Like,
The difference in that 350 to 400 is probably 50 of those are inactive, but also in regular status hearings. So they're kind of still active. At any rate, it's probably 3 times the number of cases that attorneys should carry and will be able to carry under our new caseload thing. So they really don't have adequate time to manage their cases and do all of the reporting. That's the fundamental part of it. The caseload needs to be spread out, and they probably need at least one additional raise. Again, I am working with Nye County, and it's one of the reasons why we want to move these caseload requirements up so that we can address that. It kind of has to all be addressed at once, additional attorneys, and that will provide better reporting. Did that answer your question?
It did, and I appreciate that. Thank you. I just wasn't sure if there was anything I could do as a board member, but it's really more appropriately handled at your end, on your end, and with Lorena.
The one thing I forgot to mention is that Lorena had identified a county employee that was going to start doing all of the legal server input for the cases, and then the attorneys would have to keep their own hours. But then shortly after that person was identified, she went on maternity leave, and then her maternity leave was extended. So I don't know when she's planning to come back. That aspect certainly could take a burden off the attorney's plates if there was a county employee that was able to help them out with that.
Is she in the DA's office?
She's not in the DA's office. She's in Lorena's office, I think, and I can't remember her name.
Oh, I know who she is, Melissa. Okay.
Okay, any other questions?
I was just wondering what the format is if the lawyers have like a form that they can fill out just to make it as simple as possible. That's for most of us, that's the worst thing to do is bill.
So it's a case management system that they have to use. All organized offices and contract holders have to use legal server for all of the one-off appointments,
Right.
either our designee, the appointed council administrator in the counties, or our office puts the time in for them. But we just don't have the manpower to put in the time for
Right.
everyone. And they'd have to record it anyway, so it's kind of
Right.
like, just put it in the thing.
I can't imagine having 300 cases. That's
I
just
can't either. It's,
shocking.
no, it's
Yeah.
unconscionable, really.
It is, absolutely.
Okay, very good. See, do we need any kind of a motion on any one of those?
No.
I don't think so. So, okay. Good. If there are no other questions, we'll move on. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate that. We're going to keep you on here, though. Next item is number 7, the Silver Embrace Award. And I'm going to turn it over to Tom.
So this goes in the category of good news as well. I went down in February to Vegas to accept on behalf of the department the Silver Embrace Award from the the Public Interest Law Association, PILA, at the Boyd School of Law. And this is an award that is nominated by members of the legal community at large to honor an organization that is, quote, an unsung hero doing good work out in the legal community in Nevada. And so the department received that this year, and it's kind of a big deal. And we were going to bring the award here to show everyone, but we're so afraid of breaking it that we just left it in the office. But anyone that wants to see it, well,
Send us a picture. Send us a picture. That's exciting.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Anybody want to make a comment?
It
Okay.
We
means
deserve it.
basically to get this off the ground and to get recognized for it the staff should be absolutely commended. And we should be proud as board members to work with this group. They're a great group. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Chris. That's just my general comment is, some of you on the call on the board here have been involved in this for 15, 20 years in some of these efforts, but I was fortunate to be involved at the ground level and just to see where we started with that long list of Davis settlement requirements and where we've come. And it just seems like every year we just get a little bit further down the road. And again, it goes back to you, Marcy and Tom and Peter. Thank you so much. This is a great honor, and this is all due to you guys and the board members. We've got some great board members as well. So great. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. We're going to keep you up.
Hey, Dave,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
this is actually Jeff. I apologize for the delay. It was rained around my house this morning and blew up my internet. It took me forever to get here. I've listened to the last couple of items, however, but I was one of those guys that was on Justice Cherry's committee that started, I don't know, 15, 16 years ago or something. And I just wanted to echo what Chris just said, that it's nice that we're getting recognition for this group and all the work that we have done and can do in the future. So sorry I was late, but congratulations on that.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for your comments. Appreciate it. And thanks for continuing to be a part of the effort. So, all right. Any other comment? I want to make sure you get in here before we move on. Okay, then we'll move on to item 8, oversight update. And Tom, you're going to provide that as well.
thank you again, Chair. So yeah, we have the fiscal year 23 quarter 3 report in your packet. Our data keeps getting better despite some of the challenges that we've discussed. It's the reason why we updated the data that we gave to NCSC, because every quarter, it's more complete and robust. So that's there. If anyone has any questions about that, one of us would be happy to answer that. As for the oversight update, our on the ground, kind of boots on the ground oversight has really been marginalized the last 6 months just due to our work with the legislature, and especially the last quarter. It's just demanded that we be in town because we never know when we're going to be called to testify or into a workshop or whatever else. But we still have done some oversight on the ground. Peter went out to Douglas County for a day, and the report should be attached here. Essentially, everything's going really well there. I discussed Nye County a little bit. They are, I mean, all of those contract attorneys are really to be applauded. They're just doing amazing work for what they have to work with, and they're just standing up and doing it, and it's great. And Lorena is doing a great job of trying to, turn a really big boat. But I think our caseload requirements will really help with that. We discussed in some detail in our last special meeting the situation in Carson City with them building the Carson City Public Defender's Office. And we're right now analyzing and investigating Story County, who would like to join that corrective action, but we haven't made any conclusions on that yet. So I'll take any questions about either of those things.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions from the board? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 9, review and approval of the annual report. So go ahead, Tom.
Again, I won't go into detail about this. Our annual report this year is a very zen report. There's lots of trees in it. And when I started working on this early in the year, it's like, what am I gonna talk about? What's going to be in there? And then as it turns out, like, we've actually done a lot of things. And of course, the legislative session helped, but it's a really great year in review. And I think gives a little snapshot of what we're doing. But I'll just put that out for questions as well, if anybody has anything.
Any questions regarding the annual report that was sent out to everybody? I thought it was a great report. It was nice and clean, easy to read, and short and to the point. So I appreciate that very much. So thank you very much. So thus I would just need a motion if there's no other questions. Need a motion to approve the annual report for.
So moved.
I'll
That was Joni.
second.
So moved.
Got Joni's got a first and Jeff is a second. So everybody understands the motion. All those in favor signal by aye.
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 Any opposition? Thank you very much. Motion passes. And we'll move on here. Number 10, training and externship update. And I'll turn it over to Peter.
Yeah, happy to take this one. So we had our 3rd annual Defenders Conference that was on May 4th and 5th in Reno at the Silver Legacy. This is our 2nd in-person conference. We had excellent attendance. We had 45 people getting CLE on each day of the programming. We had probably upwards of 60 people attend total on the first day and upwards of 50 on the second day. We had several networking events. We had at least 30 people for dine-arounds, the networking events that happened between each day's session. So we really got an opportunity for public defenders from across the state to get to know each other. We actually had representation from every county in the state at this conference. So at least one public defender from every county in Nevada was able to attend. Part of that's due to our continue to receive the Burn JAG grant, sub-grant from DPS. We were able to subsidize. We had 20 applicants. I think 19 of those applicants were approved to receive an award for a scholarship to reimburse their travel expenses to attend the programming. So far, I think 12 attorneys have applied to receive that reimbursement based on that award. Hopefully, the last due will trickle in the next few days before the end of the fiscal year. This conference was centered around storytelling. We had storyteller David Mann, who's been a speaker at several state bar conferences, and other SIA legal education programs come in and speak to our attendees. We had several Supreme Court justices, the ever magnificent John Lambros helping us out. We had Ozzy Fumo close out the programming. It was really a great show. If any of you get the chance to attend next year, you're more than welcome to attend. We'll find you a seat. I'd also like to thank our sponsors. We had several, including Sapiens Practice and Washoe County, Churchill County, Lander County, and the beautiful Humboldt County. So really thank you to the counties that stepped up and provided some resources. We were able to provide some snacks, beverages to our attendees so that they had a little more sustenance to keep them awake during some of the slower parts of programming. During the program, they were able to receive 12 units of CLE. One of those units was ethics. There's also a potential substance abuse and mental health that they could have received during the lunch hour. So a great assortment of programming during that conference. And we're hoping to get started again next year. We're still looking for venues and coming up with themes. So if anyone has any suggestions, we're open to ideas.
And Chair, if I could just add one thing, we had a really great opportunity the first day where we invited one leader from each county public defender's office to come to lunch. So I think it was the first time ever that we had a public defender from every single county in the same room at the same table, getting to know each other, talking to each other, and we're hoping to continue that moving forward. I think that was one of the most exciting things. And I believe there's a picture of that lunch in the annual report because it was very huge. Some of these people didn't even know each other. So it's nice to be able to put a face to the name and know who these people are.
Perfect. Thank you.
I saw some mention of the National Criminal Defense Lawyer, about a week program that they put on yearly. And I really know, I know some people who have gone to it. It's life-changing. And I wonder if that could be, some kind of benefit to some of the lawyers who, been around for a while and have been putting in the big hours. Those are awesome programs.
And Allison, that's part of what we would like to do with that funding that has been set aside in our request for that training. Peter had the wonderful idea to be able to have an amount of money that our attorneys could basically ask for and say, I would like to go to this conference or this drug court training, and we could approve that to try and send as many people as possible to the trainings that they want to go to. Because we realize that we can't provide everything everyone might want. We love this opportunity to get everyone together for our local trainings, but we want to encourage them to be able to go away as well. So that's going to be part of our ask from that amount that's set aside in that statutory contingency account.
Nice.
Chair, if I could just add one thing as well. I want to just remind everyone, prosecutors have enjoyed these kinds of statewide networking and training and bonding experiences for decades. And this is the first time that public defenders from around the state have been able to do this, especially in the rurals. And I just want to commend Peter again on his second very successful really well attended, really well put on conference. It is a huge benefit to this community.
Absolutely. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
You want to move on to the next one, Peter?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah, I can give you an externship update. So in the spring, since I'm supervising externs and interns, things seem to break down by term. So for spring semester, we had 2 legislative externs from the Boyd School of Law. One of those was a day student. One of those is an evening student who works full time and is going to law school part time, but still managed to work out a lot of time to do some work for us. And they're both legislative externs. They did a lot of work doing research for us over the last 6 months during the legislative session, contributed some valuable information for both our department and for a lot of the people we work with to kind of understand what was moving through the legislature, how it could affect the way we do the work we do, how the public defenders do the work they do. And so we're actually developing some training materials based on the research they've conducted. So hopefully we'll be getting that out to our membership in the coming months. Over the summer, we'll have 7 interns and externs. They've started working actually a few weeks ago. That's basically the size of our department, 7 employees. So it's a lot to manage 7 other people and come up with sufficient amount of projects for them. Many of them are from the Public Interest Law Association at Boyd. So they do a lot of excellent work. They're really interested in public defense and public interest, and they're always a great asset to the department to have. I think I just mentioned briefly, like, like the relationship we have with Boyd is due in part because we're obligated to by statute. And there's part of it that's really trying to build a pipeline from Boyd into public defense. But it really has been fantastic watching the kind of relationship grow and develop to where Boyd's really a partner with us in a lot of the things we're trying to do. We're being, I think, a good partner with Boyd and really getting their students some opportunities they wouldn't otherwise see.
And Peter, did you want to touch upon the summer extern at the Public Defender's Office?
Yes, the State Public Defender's Office does have one extern. She's receiving scholarship funds, and those were provided by the State Bar of Nevada on a grant. So she's receiving a $6,500 stipend to work this summer in Carson City. And I think she started almost a month ago now. And hopefully she'll enjoy her experience and be encouraged to come work in a rural county in Nevada after she's done with her law school career.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you on that. Let's go to C, update on the John R. Justice Grant.
Sure. Yeah, we've been really fortunate to be able to continue the John R. Justice Grant. This is a federal grant that's been awarded to the department to facilitate. And basically, this gives public defenders and prosecutors an opportunity to receive student loan sort of reimbursement grants from the federal government. So if any public defenders or prosecutors are willing to commit themselves to 3 years of additional service, they can receive an annual grant to pay their student loans directly. So this is a way to subsidize their student loan balances during their service to the state. Right now for this year, we have 30 applicants that applied. We expect that we'll be able to give most, if not all of those applicants an award of some amount. And that way we can give them some assistance with their student loans repayment. We do have additional funding going into the next few fiscal years. We expect the program to continue, and hopefully we can make this a continuing success for the public defenders and prosecutors in the state.
Great. Thank you very much for that report. All right, we'll move on. Item 11. So we're just going to be looking at scheduling of future meetings here, and I will let you kind of lead that discussion, Marcy.
Thank you, Chair. We wanted to give the board an opportunity to put things on their calendar so they know when our meetings are. What we are proposing is continuing our first Thursday of the month at 1 p.m. every quarter. And we are asking that the next meeting that's going to be set in August be a board meeting and a workshop so that we can start making change on these regulations. I know in talking with Cassie Hall that there is some overlap between her board meetings. So I don't know if there can be some discussion on that of whether there's an alternate date, which might work better where we all can be present.
Yeah, thank you. And because I know, Cassie, your meetings are normally Thursdays, is that correct?
Wednesdays.
Or Wednesdays? Oh, they are Wednesday. Okay, so keeping it on a Thursday that's not a problem
Should
for
be
you
okay.
based on the county commission.
As long as it's not the third week of the month, because then we do our board meetings, the overlap,
Overlap. Okay,
the department head meetings
got you. Okay,
Thursdays.
that's where the rub is right there. then.
Right.
Okay. All right. So currently, that's kind of what we've been doing, right?
August
Third
3rd
week?
would work.
It
Yeah.
was the third week, but because of that inability of Cassie to attend, we're proposing moving it to the first Thursday of the month on a quarterly basis, if the board is able to do that.
Well, thanks, everybody.
Yeah, that certainly works for me. So.
Yep.
Any board members, anybody have a problem with that would not allow you to attend?
No, they look good.
Very good. That sounds like that will work then. So I don't know that I need a motion for that, right? So we'll just, so that's the plan right now. We'll get that information out to you so that you can get everything on your calendar. And so that should take care of it. That looks like that's all of it now. Was there any other thing you wanted to talk about that on Marcy with respect to those 5 that are listed there?
Just that we would request to have a workshop
The
for
workshop.
the next August 3rd, that we make that a board meeting and workshop. So long as we're able to put some proposals together and kind of have a discussion on what the regulations should look like moving forward.
Marcy, will these all start at 9? I want to start loading my calendar.
We have it currently set for 1 PM. I don't know if we'd
Oh,
need to,
1. Okay.
I don't know if we need to move the workshop to 9 AM or if we'd like to keep it 1 PM.
One works, I think.
Yeah.
And so are we doing July 6th or are we skipping to August?
Well, based on this, looks like we're just skipping to August.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
We may, just thinking about it, we do need approval for our annual report every year. So we may need to have a short meeting sometime in June of 2024, but we can cross that road when we get there. If you'd like, or we can push back our May meeting to have that in June so we can get approval of our
Gotcha.
annual report. We are required to, once we get the board approval, we need to submit that annual report to the legislature, the Supreme Court, and the governor.
Right. Okay, well, we'll play that by ear. So probably just need to call a special meeting in June for that, then I suspect. Okay. All right. Yeah, any other comments? If not, I'll move on to public comment. And that's item 12, public comment. So anybody online, virtually, have a public comment? All right, hearing.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
hang on. Mercedes, go ahead.
thank you for all this amazing work and keep it up, and may peace, light, and love prevail from all of you always. Thank you for all you do to help others. So, so important. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Very good. Then I'll move to adjourn this meeting of the DIDS board, and the time is 10:02 a.m. And thank you, everybody, for joining today, and especially thank you to those folks who made the trek to Winnemucca. I had a little Basco meal last night, and we're also doing a mine tour this afternoon for some of them. So,
Oh,
and
I'm jealous.
especially
Good job. Good meeting.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
thank you. Have a good day.
Happy
everybody.
Friday, everyone.
Yes, happy Father's Day.